Alex, today we're going to do a very special episode of Dorktown. This is the Ricky Henderson episode. And the special thing about this is, there's a lot of people who watch us who don't even watch sports, believe it or not. So you and I get to be the ones to tell them about Ricky Henderson.
The honor of a lifetime.
It's almost impossible to establish an unbreakable career record at this point in history. Baseball has just been around too long for that. Consider the all-time home run record of 762. Want to break it? Okay. First, you need to play at least 20 seasons. How likely is that? Well, in this 20-year span, 1,688 position players entered the major leagues. 16 of them ended up playing at least 20 seasons, so your odds of playing that long are less than 1%. Now that you've threaded that needle, the only thing you have to do next is hit 38 home runs in all 20 of those seasons. Do you realize how difficult that is to do even once? Let's stay in this same time span. Hitters played a total of 2,752 full seasons. 113 of them resulted in at least 38 home runs. That is about 4%. You have to make it to the top 4% every year for 20 years straight. Congratulations, you're still 3 short of breaking the record. You're gonna have to come back at like age 42 and hit 3 more, I'm sorry. That's what it would take just to break the record by 1. There is no such thing as shattering a record like this. That's never gonna happen. What does this have to do with Ricky Henderson? We'll get there. Here's the progression of the home run record throughout the entire history of baseball. In the 20s and 30s, Babe Ruth dragged the record to about 94% of what it is today. We've spent the last 80 years or so hacking away at the final 6% or so. That is generally how these records work, right? The hits record has barely moved since the Great Depression. Same with runs, same with RBI. The total bases mark hasn't moved since before I was born. It's very easy to look at this and conclude that we're very close to reaching the physical limits of how much a human being can do on a baseball diamond. That we've done the very best we can do. Now with walks, we can see a bit of a revolution. Barry Bonds heaped a full 20% on the all-time walks record, decades after you're supposed to shatter a record like that. But the real revolution, perhaps the greatest one-man revolution we can find in baseball's record books, belongs to Ricky Henderson. The stolen base record had barely moved since the 19th century. Thousands of players shuffled in and out of the box scores. Only Lou Brock could even make the slightest dent. And then, Ricky Henderson did that. A spike that dramatic just isn't supposed to happen at this point in baseball history. Too many players played for too many years for this to be happening. It's like drawing your name in a slab of concrete that was poured last month. But Ricky did it. Alex, we can't talk about Ricky Henderson without sharing some Ricky Henderson stories that may or may not be true. One of my favorites is it establishes that Ricky Henderson was kind of an alien. He didn't get a lot of things, not because he wasn't smart, because he was actually a genius, but he was just from another planet where things like money don't exist. Case in point, one time his team was, their record books were way off. They had $1 million more than they thought they were gonna have. And they eventually find out the root of the problem. They call Ricky Henderson, they're like, hey, that $1 million check that we wrote you, did you cash it? It turned out he did not. He put it on his wall. He framed it.
I wonder what they use in his planet to exchange for goods and services. When Ricky broke Ty Cobb's career runs record in 2001, that was about par for the course for a guy who was always in scoring position, who loved scoring position, who lived in scoring position. But to get in scoring position, one must first get on base. This was easy for Ricky. As one of just 32 humans in the history of planet Earth with membership to the 3,000 hit club, his bat got him aboard plenty. And when it didn't, his patience and discipline consistently did from the moment he entered the bigs, drawing 117 walks his first full year, the youngest player ever to walk that much in a season. The next step would be swiping second, which, well, we all know Ricky enjoyed standing at first base about as much as Bobby Cox enjoyed calm, pleasant discourse with umps. With all these walks and steals, it didn't take long to make history. Before he even blew out 25 candles, Henderson already had 3 different seasons in which he both drew 100 walks and stole 100 bases. Since 1900, every other MLB player has combined to give us 0 of those 100 seasons. So as you might have guessed, for his overall career, the frequency with which he'd reach base and steal his way to more is unprecedented. Feels like we ought to take a look at MLB's all-time leaderboard for most times getting on via hit or walk with stolen bases thrown in too. We see that not only is Ricky king here, all the way at the top with over 6,600 of them, but only Ty Cobb, Pete Rose, and Barry Bonds are even in his ballpark. No one else is within 1,000. For perspective, in 2017, Joey Votto led the majors with 318 hits plus walks plus stolen bases. That means Eddie Collins, even with being top 5 on the all-time list, would still need to tack on nearly 3.5 MLB-leading Votto seasons just to bridge the gap between he and Henderson.
Here's another one. Ricky played here in New York City for a while. He played for the Yankees, and upon getting a home here, he was so proud of his new condo. He was telling all his teammates about it, and he bragged that he could see the entire state building.
Come on, Ricky.
That's pretty good, right? Yeah, no, it's true. It's actually true. Y'all remember Stratego? That board game where you had to send your army to find your enemy's flag? The whole game hinged on the fact that you didn't know where the flag was. I remember there was a kid in my neighborhood who was so good at this game and so overconfident that he would always turn his flag around and say, here's a flag, try to get it. And he would still win. That was Rickey Henderson on the base paths, especially in 1982. That season, he had 225 stolen base opportunities. In other words, he was on either first or second and the next base was open. He attempted 172 steals, so in effect, if you were a pitcher who gave Ricky a chance to steal, he would do so about 3/4 of the time. Now, usually stolen bases rely on the element of surprise, right? But Ricky used the threat of a stolen base as a weapon, as if to say, I am going to steal. There is nothing you can do about it. It seems reckless, but it's not reckless if you're good enough. He'd just steal until he got caught. This figure is just a little bit inflated because it doesn't account for the times Ricky stole multiple times in a single trip around the bases. In 1982 alone, there were 19 times in which he stole second and then turned around and stole third on the same trip on the base paths. Ricky was one of the most resourceful athletes I have ever seen. He was an expert of making something out of absolutely nothing. He demonstrated this masterfully on June 8, 1982 against the White Sox. In the 5th inning, he lucked into first thanks to an error by the third baseman. The guy behind him hit a single. Ricky managed to stretch himself all the way to third on that hit, which, by the way, is another of his talents. Going from first to third on a single is often pretty tough to do, but throughout his career, Ricky made it to third almost half the time. Anyway, right after that, Ricky steals home. Fast forward 2 innings later. Ricky gets hit by a pitch and sent to first base. Then he immediately steals second. Then he immediately steals third. From there, all it takes is a single to send him all the way home. Within 3 innings, Rickey Henderson had turned an error and a beanball into 7 bases. Ricky was an alchemist.
So he threw left-handed and he batted right-handed. Now, there have been over 800 players in the live ball era with at least 5,000 career plate appearances. He is the only one to do that.
Okay, throwing left-handed, I understand. But I don't understand how y'all right-handers do stuff right-handed. It's so weird. Whenever I watch you guys write, it's like, how do you even write right-handed? I don't get it.
What also makes Ricky's 1982 season so transcendent is how he stacked up within the context of the American League. Upon conclusion of that beautiful 3-steal game in Chicago, Ricky's total for the season had risen to 57, literally tripling any other AL player with no one else even at 20 yet. He could have just kicked his feet up right then in early June, gone on sabbatical for the rest of the year, and he still would have led his league in steals for the season, after taking the final 105 games off. Fast forward to near the end of the season, and before missing some time over the final couple weeks, Ricky woke up on the morning of September 12th with 124 steals. Cleveland was the lone AL team to have stolen that many. It was more than Baltimore, Boston, and Minnesota combined. Minnesota in particular is worth a deeper dive into how they stacked up against Ricky, because that's where it gets really weird. So at this point of the year, the Twins had completed 87% of their season. They were sitting there with a total of 32 stolen bases. At the same point in time, let's check how much Rickey Henderson had stolen just third base. And would you look at that, it's 33. That year, less than 1 out of 10 stolen bases were of third. And yet here we stood in mid-September with one man having stolen just that base more than an entire team had stolen any base. That is Rickey Henderson for you.
So I think what we've learned is we could go on a very long time about Rickey Henderson. It's really tough to name a more interesting baseball player than Rickey Henderson, wouldn't you say?
Other than Adam Dunn, yeah.
Yeah, it's Adam Dunn, number 2, Rickey Henderson. Can you name a baseball player less interesting than Rickey Henderson?
Everyone but Adam Dunn.
Brad Klontz.
And Brad
That's
Klontz.
your answer. Y'all, thanks for watching Dorktown. We're not going anywhere. We're going to do plenty more episodes for y'all. Please like and subscribe, not just to our video, but to every video you have ever seen.